Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We are here with the fine folks from Goodspeed Musicals here at the historic Goodspeed Opera House, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here today. First up, my guest, Michael O'Flaherty, good old Irish name.
Absolutely.
The music director, 22 seasons as the resident music director here, which is very unique in and of itself. First of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for having us in your house today.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
Let's talk about Goodspeed Musicals and the Goodspeed Opera House in general. I just kind of want to go back and talk about a little history because you've been here for 22 seasons. How far back can you go?
How far back
Yeah.
in those 22 seasons?
Yeah, all the way back, you know? Just a little bit
Absolutely.
of history for those who might not be familiar.
Well, my tenure here, I came really just to do one show. I was just hired to do It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman, and then got asked to stay for the second show that season, and then got asked if I would come here permanently. So
It was a really good job.
Yeah, then I bought a house, so now Michael Price is like, hesitant to fire anybody once they've actually bought something.
He's the executive director,
He's
right?
our executive director, yeah. So, I mean, it was just one of those things that I never thought I was ever going to leave New York City. I was living in New York and working as a freelancer in New York, and I came here and fell in love with the place and just never left.
Now, it's unusual for a resident music director to exist in a situation like this to begin with.
Very
right?
few theaters actually have a resident music director. Most of the people that I know that are music directors are freelance people, and they always, every time I see them, they always say, "Oh, you've got the best gig in the world. Don't ever give up that gig because it's a solid 52-week a year, permanent thing." And no other musical director has that.
Wow. Are others envious of you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and
Oh,
do
my gosh.
you let them know about it too?
Of course.
Of course you have to. So it's great. Now, there's actually technically two theaters here, right? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, we have our main stage, which is the Opera House itself, and then we also have the Norma Terrace Theater, which is in Chester, which is a smaller 200-seat theater. It's not exactly what is referred to in the business as a black box theater, but it's sort of similar to that. And what we do down there mostly is new work. And so it's not experimental, but in some ways new work, and shows that are just in the process of being developed. And that's a big part of our mission here is to not only revive the older musicals, the classic musicals, but to also invest in the future of the musical theater as well.
Yeah, you can't just live in the past forever.
Exactly,
right?
or otherwise you become a museum, and even the shows that we do here that are revivals of old shows, we call them revisals. We don't actually call them revivals because we do a lot of work on the shows. We change them a lot and freshen them and bring them into the world of modern musicals. So it's not, you can never think of the Goodspeed as a museum of musicals because it just isn't. I mean, Most Happy Fella is a case in point. We did a lot of work on the show that's currently playing. We changed the musical elements a great deal. We have a brand new orchestration. We made cuts and fixes, and with the consent of the authors or the estates. But Goodspeed is given the license to do that kind of work on shows, which a lot of other theaters would not be able to
Because of its reputation.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, when you say you basically tweak it, you kind of modernize it a little bit, but at the same time leave enough of the original
absolutely.
in there so that they know what they're going to see.
I mean, we would never take a show like this and move it into the 1990s and put a disco beat to it. It's not that kind of tweaking. It's shaping and fixing and trying to concentrate a little bit more clearly on the character development and that kind of thing. Especially shows from a certain era that were very large and sort of a little melodramatic in some ways, and we try to find directors who hone in a little bit closer on the story and especially because of the size of our theater, you can do that. You can really, it's so small, so you can really see the actors. You feel like you are right in front of the actors.
The theater in this building that we're in, it's a 398 capacity, right?
Yes.
Now, to have that intimate feel, describe that.
Well, it's very unusual. I mean, that's why a lot of people come here is because they just love the feeling that it doesn't feel amplified. For instance, it doesn't. I mean, we are slightly amplifying things, but you just don't feel it. The actors, even if you're in the very last row, the actors are only about 100 feet away from you.
You're immersed in it. Whether
Yes.
you're in the front row or the back row, you're right there. It's on you. You're like a part of it, right?
And on a small stage like that, in a small house, you put 22 people and they're all dancing, and it's miraculous how that happens even as it is. But to see that happening so close to you is such an amazing experience.
Do you like the acoustics as far as that setup
The
goes
acoustics
too?
in the house are brilliant.
Yeah.
They really are. The only reason we do any amplification at all is, well, for two reasons. It's to help get the voices just slightly over the orchestration, so that we don't have to, as the orchestra, we don't have to play quite as far down as we used to have to play. So we goose it just a little bit to get it over the top. Also, audiences' ears have changed over the decades, and they want to hear a different kind of sound now. And we don't go there. We don't go into the big in-your-face amplification. But it just helps a little bit to raise the voices up over the top.
Do you get positive response to those that notice that there's a slight variation on it, not too much at all, but it's like the perfect amount to update it and just sort of freshen it up a little bit? So even if you've seen performances or the show before, it's the same, but it's a newer version of it, and it's like exhilarating, don't you think?
People love it, absolutely. Even, again, with Most Happy Fellow, we did the show about 20 years ago, 24 years ago, I guess, and that was a slightly refreshed version, and this is a slightly more refreshed version than that, and people are actually noticing it. And the critics are noticing that those few that have actually seen both of those productions are picking up on the fact that there have been interesting changes that were made even from our first production to this one. So.
For those who aren't familiar with the business, describe the job of a music director.
Okay.
But that could be a whole show in itself.
It is, yeah. I'm involved from the very beginning. I'm involved in choosing the shows. I'm involved in hiring the director, actually, which is very unusual.
So you're kind of like the producer, too,
well,
right?
in some ways.
Yeah.
I'm very involved in the audition processes, hiring the musicians, of course, and then all the pre-production work that the director and the choreographer and I do. Of course, we have to do all of that work. Then I have to oversee the rehearsals, and I have to make sure that the orchestrator is working in the right direction and feeding him all that material as it comes available. It's a lot.
Wow.
And then conduct the shows. And
what does the director do?
The director doesn't do anything. No, it's all his vision. And, but I have to work very closely with the director, and I have terrific collaborations with all the directors that we use here. We don't use the same director over and over again.
Right.
But we have a few that we have used many times. But it's
depending on the performance.
Exactly, and we choose the directors based on the material, who we feel is sort of right for that show and not right for that show.
Does it seem like, do you have basically, so you've been doing this for 22 seasons, so you have a stable of directors and people in general. They're your go-to people. You already know what this would work best with this person.
Exactly.
Because I was going to ask you, how do you choose the people that are working on it?
Well, it's just that. I mean, really, Rob Ruggiero, who directed Most Happy Fellow and Showboat and Carousel, he's become our sort of go-to guy for the dramatic musicals for the most part, and he does an amazing job with those things, and really hones in on the material. There are other directors who are better at the maims and the Hello Dollies and that kind of thing, and can bring something very special to those shows. So, and on the other hand, we don't necessarily like to pigeonhole people completely into one style. I mean, people can do different styles of work.
Right?
So, exactly. Yeah. It can happen with a director just as easily as with an actor. So we like to try to give our directors some opportunities to do other things as well.
How about the actors themselves?
All the actors come from New York City for the most part. Not all of them actually live in New York, but that's where we do all our auditions. They're all equity actors. We do have the ability to use a few non-equity people in every cast, which is a special deal that we have with equity. But people are dying to come here, honestly. I mean, we find this out all the time.
Yeah.
The actors really look at this as a very much a feather in their cap.
So you're not out seeking to find, they're coming to you in essence, and you're deciding amongst all the...
We do, for every show, we do roughly 7 or 8 days of auditions in New York. We'll see roughly 800 people for 20 roles.
Wow. And you're involved, you said you're involved heavily in the auditions, right?
I'm at every audition.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When do you sleep? I know I literally dragged you out of a meeting to come here to tape your segment, and then you're going to go right back when you're done, right? Well, lunch. I forgot about lunch, too.
And there might be some lunch.
All right, let's talk about the shows themselves, because you are so involved, even in the selecting of them. What goes through your mind? What does that process entail?
It's a real puzzle.
And is it a collaboration?
It is, yeah. Mr. Price and our two producers and myself are pretty much the committee that chooses the material now. It's a real puzzle because we're trying to give the audience what they want, but on the other hand, we're trying to lead them to things that maybe they don't know they want.
Right.
So, but that's a balancing act that you have to, because there will be shows that we will choose that we'll think this is the greatest show in the world, and they will resist it. Sometimes an audience just will resist it. But for the most part, I think we're doing a decent job of choosing. We've sort of changed our focus a little bit over the last, say, 7 years or so. By doing really big name shows that was not part of the Goodspeed brand for a long time.
But does it attract more of the casual person who might not normally want
well, that's
to frequent?
the thing. I think we're moving away from the days when the audience was just a guarantee, and there's so much competition out there now, and so many things that people can do.
Entertainment in general, there's
exactly.
so much competition.
I mean, even just the internet is a huge competitor for us. But so we have to be very careful that we choose shows that people want to see. But on the other hand, we don't want to just do the pot boilers, as we call them. I mean, that could get tiresome after a while too. There was a time when our audience just all they wanted to see was tap dancing. We could have done 3 tap dance shows for every year, forever, and that's all they wanted to see. And I think the audience's feeling about that has changed a little bit.
And it's your job and your staff's job to see the coming trends or see where people's tastes are starting to change and be at the forefront of that so you can know we're going to bring in this type of show.
We also do audience surveys on every show, written, based on the internet, and they're contacted and asked to respond to certain questions and what did they like, what didn't they like, how much did they like it, would they recommend it to their friends, and that kind of thing. And we learn a lot from those things. We really do. We take them very seriously. So
for the casual person, or maybe someone who just hasn't frequented Goodspeed yet, what's the schedule like here? When's a good time for them to come down and see a show? They can make plans to have dinner and watch a show.
Well, we do 8 shows a week.
Okay.
2 on Wednesday, 2 on Thursday, then Friday night, 2 on Saturday, and 1 Sunday. It's quite a schedule, and that runs anywhere from 10 weeks to 12 weeks. Depending on the show. Again, we choose which shows we think can run a little longer and which will have a little bit more audience. So we have restaurants right here in the area. It's a great destination.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And as we tape the show, it's in the fall. So, I mean, the area, it's beautiful foliage.
It's lovely.
Yeah,
and we're right here in the river. And
do you do anything different, like around the holidays or anything? Or do you get festive at all? Or
they decorate and do all that. But we have experimented a little bit with some holiday shows. We did Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, and we did a couple of other things like that. We're looking again at possibly a holiday show in the future. Not this year, but we're talking about it.
Takes some time, the plan is.
It's tricky around here, because once the snow starts, it's,
So people don't want to get out and drive around in it.
So.
Good times. We're out of time for your segment, so thank you. Michael Flaherty, 22 seasons as Goodspeed's resident music director. 22 more, maybe? We'll come back and do it.
Sure.
Thanks for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a break and come back. A lot more to get to. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We are here at Goodspeed Musicals at the Goodspeed Opera House, historic Goodspeed Opera House. And I'm here with Bill Nolte, actor extraordinaire. You may know him from Tony, as from one of his performances, but we're going to get to all that. First of all, Bill, thank you for having us at your place here today.
My pleasure.
Historical. Let's talk about you. Let's go back in time first, because this is not your first time here at Goodspeed. We can go way back with you, your first time as a young up-and-comer. Let's start out there. Okay.
It was in 1996, and I was in a wonderful production of Sweeney Todd. I played the Beetle Bamford in that. And I lived in the Lawton, which is the big old Victorian mansion in town. And that's where the cast lived. That was really the top-notch housing at the time. And then 4 years later, I did Men of La Mancha. I did Don Quixote. I stood by for that and took over the role for the last month. So that was a real blessing, and a highlight of my career was to get to do Don Quixote at the Goodspeed. And I lived in the Stonecroft, which is another old Victorian house, and They let me unearth this old Victorian garden, and I brought a lot of plants from my home in Orange County, New York. And
You made it homey.
I did make it homey, and 13 years later, I come back and I see that this garden that I planted with all my perennials has come back to life every year, and so I kind of have a soft spot for the Stonecroft.
Were they taking care of it? Were they taking care of the garden? No.
Well, some people did.
Yeah.
Some people liked gardening, and they would put them in that house and say, "Bill Nolte has a garden out there that he started. If you want to, encourage it." And some people did, but it had basically been ignored for a few years. But everything—the bamboo, the peonies, the Joe Pye weed, the goldenrod—had all come back, and sedum had all come back, and all they needed was a little love and care. And then this time, now I've come and they've got new housing, which is the Goodspeed housing. It's a whole village. And I live up on top of the hill in some beautiful townhouses, and it's just lovely. I can't say enough about it. Times have changed, and it's a pleasure to be back, and it feels like home.
Now, you lived there because of the length of these shows. You're here for a number of months living there, right?
Yeah. This is the first time, I think we're here for 15 weeks this time. And, that's almost 4 months. And this is the first time I've been in this slot. Both times before I've been in the, you come late winter and you get to see the early spring. You get to be here all spring and then enjoy the beginning of summer. And you leave, I think, beginning of July. And this is the first time that I've gotten to come end of summer and see all of fall and maybe just a little bit of winter if I'm lucky.
Well, or if you're
December
not lucky,
1st,
depending on what the snow is like. But obviously, fall in New England, the foliage, the view, especially where we are here at Goodspeed, it's phenomenal.
Oh, it's been great. Yeah.
Now, your length of time from when you started out to here now, Goodspeed has been restored. It was saved at one point because they had other plans. It wasn't going to be here. The reception, the response to what everything that's been going on here, acting-wise, musical performance-wise, the reviews. I don't know if you're an actor who reads your reviews or just kind of shies away from it, but it's so positive what people are saying about the performances and just the overall general vibe. Do you get that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an honor to work here, and people in New York, all over the country, really know that it's so close to New York that they have their pick of really anybody they want. I'm not just talking actors, I'm talking directors and set designers and costume designers, lighting, everything. So it's really the cream of the crop, and I've seen many productions here too, and it's sort of like an assault of excellence. It's like, wow, they can get no better with that set. It's just perfect, and everything they do fits so perfectly into the opera house as well, and the audiences too. I think they know, a good thing.
Yeah.
They keep coming back, and I see people that have seen me in other shows, and it's they're kind of spoiled.
Do you like the idea? We talked about this with Michael in the first time. The idea of ever so slightly kind of tweaking the performance. I don't want to use the term update it, but change it enough to give it a fresh feel, and maybe in that sense, you're bringing in a new set of enthusiasts that might maybe not have thought about coming, but now it's an idea.
Absolutely. So many people that I talk to have never even heard of The Most Happy Fellow. And Rob Ruggiero, our director, terrific director, is real good at trimming the fat and things that are a little old-fashioned or a little hokey. He can pare down and
Modernize it, maybe? Or?
Maybe. He gives it a fresh take, and that appeals to people in the 21st century. And so many people have been very pleasantly surprised by that. They saw I've had so many people come up and say, I saw the original production, and then I saw the Goodspeed production in '92, and seen this, and each one is just fresher and fresher. So this is a brand new take on The Most Happy Fellow, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
I think that adds to the longevity of it too. If you can ever so slightly adjust to the changing taste of the audience, maybe. Is that a good way to describe it? And not so much where the original creator of the performance protests in any way, right?
Right. No, actually Frank Lesser's wife and widow, Jo Sullivan Lesser, has been up several times in rehearsals and our first performance, our opening night, and she's been very, very encouraging and has been loving it. She said Frank would be happy.
Let's talk about you as the actor. You know, sort of your day-to-day, your schedule, how you go about it, and how it's changed from back in those early times. Aside from the nicer housing now, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Tony is quite a role, both dramatically and especially vocally.
By the way, can you give a little background on Tony for those that haven't experienced it yet? Describe it.
Oh, he's a vineyard owner in Napa Valley. He's come from Italy with his probably mother and father to start this vineyard with his sister. His mother and father have passed on. He's worked very hard and kept the vineyard being very successful with his sister's help. But he's always, and everyone in town loves Tony. I mean, it's a one big family. And he's always wanted, he loves children. He talks about the bambini all the time. And he goes into San Francisco because he also likes, the theater and opera and to see movies and what have you. And there's one diner that he goes to, and he kind of takes a liking to one of the waitresses there. He doesn't even really know her name, but he sees that she's, kind of not struggling, but just kind of worn out. And he falls in love with her and writes her this note that he puts to he pins to a menu with his tie pin, and says, my name is Tony, and I think you're beautiful, and I excuse me, I have a winery up state, and
That's his pickup line.
that's his pickup line.
Yeah.
And he says, I'd love to correspond if you want to talk back. And she sees it as just a chance for someone that likes her, there's someone that's not a jerk, and so they proceed to have a relationship through letters, and then she sends her picture, and he knows who he's getting involved with, and she doesn't. She doesn't know who is writing these letters. It was just a mystery man.
So she hasn't met him.
She hasn't met him. He's just been totally in awe of her and wrote her this letter. So she sends her picture and says, why don't you send one back? And so he says, sure, I'll send one back. Then he realizes that, I'm a little bit older than she probably is, ready for, and I'm a little not as handsome as my foreman here, Joe, and why don't I send Joe's picture?
Boy.
We'll deal with the consequences later. If she gets here, she'll see that, I'm going to love her and treat her well. She's not going to have to work anymore, and she'll have this huge family of friends, and she'll have my sister Marie who'll cook for us, and she'll never have to worry again, and the looks won't even bother her. And then she does decide to come up, and we finally meet, and the story unfolds from there.
Thank you for stopping there, because I almost didn't want you to ruin it for me. Now I want to go see the performance, and
Good.
I want you to save that last part. And I hope that was a great way to paint a picture, and it's almost like a tease to get people. They now want to know what happens next.
It
was a different guy's
unfolds
photo.
incredibly.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about this piece. It just will go in one direction, and then it'll just surprise you, and it'll take another turn, and then you'll get shocked again. The second act is just a roller coaster of beautiful music, first of all. It's a masterpiece. The music is quasi-operatic, and with a lot of musical theater standards, too, like Standing on the Corner and Big D, but so many beautiful, passionate ballads like My Heart Is So Full of You and Mama Mama, which I get to sing, and it's just gorgeous music.
Well, what a way for us to wrap up the show with Bill painting that picture for you and kind of enticing you to want to come down and see. That's just one of the many performances, right? What we're going to do is we've been putting links to the website up on the screen for you to go and see a listing of all the performances and all the events and things like that that are here for Goodspeed Musicals and the Goodspeed Opera House, because there's so much to see and experience here. Bill Nolte, also Tony, for one of them, thank you very much for being on the show today.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. You can see this show and many others on our YouTube site. Till next time, take care.